I'm going to introduce you to a new medicine wheel today. This is something I've never discussed in any of my previous videos. I've never met anyone who had a perfect childhood. And most of our problems as adults started in our childhood. This is the parenting wheel. Most parents are a combination of these 8 directions on the medicine wheel. At any particular time, given the right set of circumstances, most of us had parents that could be classified as any one of these. People who don't have children of their own still act as parents. Teachers, authority figures, anyone who puts themselves in this position can be examined on this medicine wheel. Even though we may be adults, there are those who still try to parent us, even though they may not be related to us at all. Politicians, the police, anyone who thinks they have a right to tell you how to think and behave is putting themselves in a parenting position. You may look at this wheel and think the wise parents or the nurturing ones sound pretty good, but every direction has a positive and a negative side. So what kind of parent was your mother, your father? Some of us had another caregiver, like a grandparent or a foster parent. What kind of impressions have they left on your heart and mind? If you have children of your own, you may see your caregiver's words and actions in the mirror. It can be quite a shock to see the fear and sadness that you experienced years ago on your own child's face after hearing your voice repeat words your caregiver said to you. If we examine the parenting wheel, we can avoid this. We can also stop repeating toxic things in our head that were voiced by people who are no longer around. Sometimes we assume these things we were told as children are true, when they aren't anymore. They may never have been true in the past either. If we realize that these things were said not because we deserved to hear them, but because our caregivers had unresolved trauma from their own childhoods, we can begin healing ourselves. By the way, if you'd like to hear more about mental health, Native Americans, and the medicine wheel teachings, please subscribe to my channel. And if you'll hit that bell, you're more likely to be notified when I publish a new video. Thank you very much. The process of life experience wheel shows us how we develop our beliefs about how the world works. The things a person experiences leads them to make decisions about life. So whatever your caregivers experienced in their childhood contributed to what they thought was right. Of course, they grew up in a world that's very different from the one in which we live now. What they think is right may have been at one point in time, but things may have changed. Your childhood took place in a different world as well. If we don't take the time to examine how things have changed and modify our beliefs and actions, we'll be out of touch with reality. This is what leads to the negative parenting choices we see on this wheel. Keep in mind, we also parent ourselves. Our fear-feeder voices, the negative way we talk to ourselves, comes from our own worldview and what we've heard our caregivers say. They remind us of what we haven't done, how far from perfect we are, and how much better we could be. This is why it's important to look at the parenting wheel. We aren't trying to criticize our caregivers. They probably had parents who were more screwed up and abusive to them than they were to us. The way they raised us was probably a huge improvement over their childhood. We're examining parenting styles because it helps us to be better to ourselves and to others. The inner elders are our own inner parents. They don't point out our shortcomings. They're our biggest cheerleaders. They're perfect parents. But how can we be perfect parents to ourselves if we don't even know how a perfect parent behaves? We've never had any examples. Well, that's why we have this wheel. Let's start in the South. An emotional parent, just like all the others, has a positive and a negative side. The negative side of the emotional parent can present itself in two main ways. The South stands for emotion, so these will have to do with emotional energy that is not used properly. Some emotional parents want to be in control of everything. Now, they do a great job running things at work, but when they try to tell everyone in the family what to do and how to live their lives, this energy becomes toxic. It can feel like a confrontation is inevitable with every conversation. On the other hand, a parent who always needs help and can't get by on their own is another sign that you may be dealing with the negative side of an emotional parent. It can feel like they don't want to be alone and need assistance on a regular basis just to get by in life. To be clear, I'm not talking about people with a medical condition that would make it understandable why they would need assistance. If you've ever been around an energy vampire or had a caregiver who behaved in either of those ways, you know how difficult it can be. You may have grown to believe that this is normal or that it's your fault somehow. Neither of these are true. These negative behaviors are coping mechanisms. They developed as a way to survive the toxic environment these people experienced as children. Something in this behavior made life better when they were young. Just think about what their life must have been like to make them think that this was the only way to get what they needed. Most adults don't like to revisit their childhood. It can be very painful and traumatic. They don't want to remember what led them to act this way, and this is why their negative behavior has persisted. They've never stopped to think about other ways they could get their needs met. And that's the bottom line. We're all trying to simply get our needs met. We have several basic needs. The negative emotional parent has learned a way to have control, safety, and security. Unfortunately, their path to these infringes on the needs of others. As angry as we may be at them, we must remember that they're basically abused children who grew up without ever getting the care they needed to recover from their toxic environment. It's not really their fault that they don't know any better. This is a behavior habit that they've fallen into. It worked for them as a child, and they don't realize that they don't need to manipulate people this way anymore. Does that mean that we have to continue to put up with this abuse? No. We can introduce them to better ways. The positive emotional parent has learned it's okay to not have all the answers. It's okay to be vulnerable. The bottom line is independence. It takes self-esteem to refrain from bossing others around or to turn to them constantly for help. Now, they may not admit it, but a negative emotional parent always has low self-esteem. It's ironic that the way to increase their self-worth is to become less toxic and more independent. The more they realize they can't tell others what to do or enlist their help for every problem that comes along, the more self-reliant they will become. The only person we can really control is ourselves. As a child, that can be life-threatening, and this is why they developed their unique ways to control others. As an adult, we can be far more independent. Thank you very much for watching, and please subscribe if you'd like to learn more about the Medicine Wheel teachings.